some sidewalk cracks. Let's see, I feel a little bit of a difference. I can still tic-tac. These are some kind of rough roads here, so. And I'm heading down to the smoothest piece of pavement. It's pretty cold outside, but the snow fell and then the snow melted, so this could be one of the last possible days to take the Revel Kit for a run. It's a little smoother over the bumps, but I do feel a bit of a wiggle that I don't remember feeling before. Okay, so I'm gonna just set.
Start workout.
Okay. So this is the smoothest, most recently paved road. I think the challenge is seeing. My eyes are tearing up with all the wind. The brakes are nice. I must say 100% brakes are nice with the bigger wheels. All right. Acceleration's a little tamer. Hit a few manhole covers. Blow through a stop sign. And I must say those brakes are pretty effective at 100%. Well, I wouldn't say it's fun doing a high speed test in just slightly above zero weather. But like I said, it's pretty much my last chance to do this. Just passed one of those community zone radar boards, and it said I was doing 48 kilometers an hour. So we'll do one last blast here. Okay. I'm getting a little more used to the bigger wheels. They're not as unfamiliar as when I first hopped on. Still a little wobbles. I think you have to expect that with a higher center of gravity and a softer wheel. It's a bit of an uphill stint here. And the weather is cold, so the batteries are going to not be performing at their best. But I started with warm batteries. Easing off a bit because I'm catching up to the car. And so I'm going to call that as the high speed test and then head back. road wheels with the 100% brakes are perfect. I think even if you were careless, you couldn't throw yourself. But definitely strong enough to do some serious collision avoidance if someone pulled in front of you or stopped in front of you. Hitting some big ruts in the road, and they don't hurt the feet. Adjust the camera and do a little more sidewalk work here. Oh, it's good. Uphill acceleration here. And there it is. Hi. I'm going to talk more about the Revel Kit, and the topic of this video is water resistant versus waterproof. If you want a waterproof electric skateboard, you get a one wheel. And if you want an electric longboard that has long range and goes really fast, then you have to recognize that nothing is really waterproof out there. Boosted Board put a ton of effort into making theirs a waterproof board. They advertised it as waterproof. People drove through puddles. They had some battery, I wouldn't call them explosions, but some battery fires. They put a hold on distribution. They worked on it for months and didn't send any out. You can see they did a lot here. They've got two, rigid shells that go together. They've got a gasket under here. They got bolts all the way around. They got a grommet there, and they still couldn't get it to be waterproof. So then they said, okay, it's not a waterproof skateboard, it's water resistant. And really there's no real point in having a waterproof electric longboard, because if you get water in your motors, they're gonna rust and you're gonna wreck it. So water resistant makes sense, and people shouldn't drive through puddles or go riding in the rain. I actually hit a couple puddles by accident riding at night, and I had no troubles. But I know of two other people who went actually riding in the rain and went through many puddles, and they got water in their batteries and they had to get new batteries. So first thing is to drive a board the way it's supposed to be driven. But I have a few tips on how to make these a little bit more water resistant. So with a removable battery, you've got a lot more seams and a lot more places for water to get in. And personally, this is the area that I would suspect that water would get in, because it's right adjacent to the wheels. The wheels are going to be spraying water. The motor might spray some water. There's a seam back here, and this connection is right adjacent to that. So I would think if any place, if there was one place that water was going to get in, it would get in back here. So I'm going to show you some simple and some complicated ways of making your Revel Kit a little bit more waterproof. So you're riding along, all of a sudden it starts raining, you stop and walk home with your board. That's the best solution. That's what I do. I do it with both my boosted boards. I do it with my Revel Kit. Just don't ride in the rain. Other solution is you're riding and there's a few little puddles out there and you're worried you might hit them. And so this is a silicone bathing cap. It's a junior size. So I'm just going to wrap it around there. And ta-da, we have a substantially more water-resistant Revel Kit. I haven't actually ridden with it. I tried a few of these in the stores. The latex ones
just slide right off. They're too slippery. The silicone ones stick pretty well, and so that's one solution. So you ride around with that in your pack sack or your pocket. Second one is that's like a $14, $18 solution. Here's the dollar solution. This is a dollar store shower cap. And so you take that, you wrap it around there, and you tuck it in. And again, that's kind of a stop and Band-Aid solution if you think you're gonna hit some moisture on the road, okay? Now those are, you could call them cool, or you could call them not cool. But you have to stop and do that. So I've been working on a little mud flap. Now the idea of the mud flap is that it's gonna sit here, and if stuff flies off the motors and the wheels, the seam here on the battery that's adjacent to that connector where water could fall into the battery is shielded from the spray. And I think this is a pretty good idea. Now if you zoom in here, you'll see that I've actually made it cover up this little hole here too. If I want, I could super glue that down or use some silicone. And I've got a little bracket that I've made that is gonna go in there like that. And if I hold that down and tug on this, I'm pretty confident that's not going anywhere, okay? So I'm gonna show you the shape of these things one more time. So I've cut a little notch out here. I've made it the same width as the motors, just a little bit more. And it just slides right in there like that. And so what I'm gonna do right now is I'm just gonna mark the holes from underneath in the rubber with my screwdriver. So if you look under here, you see I've got the screws here, so I'm just gonna hold down my fingers on top where the screws are, give a little bit of a twist, and then I'm just set up with a little bit of drilling here. There they are. Drill. A little bit of drilling here. Okay, so that goes nicely over those screws. So now the next thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna put this back in here. I'm gonna get my screws up through there a bit. I'll grab my screwdriver again. I'm gonna mark those holes. Okay, that's gonna fit. Now, my plan here is I don't want to sandwich, I don't want to hold the trucks to the board with this in the middle. I want metal on metal. So I'm gonna use two sets of nuts. One to hold the trucks and the drive in place, and a second one to hold down the mud flap. Okay, and now let's put our mud flap on. Step one. And step two. Okay, I'm satisfied with that. I didn't get quite down to the nylon on that last one. But there it is, a little mud flap. I could trim that down a little bit more if I wanted to, or I could leave it right there. Battery pops out as usual, but this area here where the water could come in and fall into the interior of the battery through the terminals is much better protected that way. Now, you could take your battery apart and try and use a bunch of silicone to prevent that, but then you kind of avoid your battery warranty. So I think that's a pretty decent solution. Okay, so what I want to talk about now is keeping these adapters tight. The prototype had 4 bolts that hold these little tabs into the motor there. And on the production version, they removed those 4 bolts. And I asked why, and the reason was that the bolts were loosening off on one side, so they decided to remove them and rely on this axle nut to keep the wheel tight against the adapter, tight against the motor. And so I went and checked my prototype, and sure enough, the bolts were loose on one side and not loose on another. It's kind of a characteristic of screws that when the motor's turning one way and they're vibrating, that the screws loosen, on the other side, going the other direction, they tighten. So I'm not sure that removing the screws was the best solution, because I do have a few colleagues that have these that might be having some problems with the axle nuts loosening on one side, and then the adapter coming loose, and then spinning and then sticking, and that spin and stick can throw you. I also think the ESC probably doesn't like it when you've got one motor turning normal speed and the other one freewheeling. So I think that also might cause the ESC to throw out a warning and maybe apply the brakes because something's going wrong. So anyways, I've picked up the right screws, and I've picked up some Loctite, but instead of Loctite, I'm going to try a couple different spring washers, because I think that the right solution is the 4 screws and some spring washers to hold them in place. So I've got the wheels off, and this is the original. This is actually the drive assembly from the prototype and the original screws, which I tightened about 4 weeks ago. I haven't done a lot of riding since then, but I'm going to test these out. So on this side, I can do another, wow, almost a quarter turn. There. Yeah, I can do almost a quarter turn here. And on this one, yeah, I really can't move them. They're still a little quarter turn, 1/8 of a turn. No, some of them are just so tight. So, yeah, another little 1/8 of a turn. In general, I'd say this side here, so wheels down, it would be the left side. If your drive's on the back, and the reverse if your drive is on the front. So I'm going to take apart the front wheels, and I'm going to put it back together with the new screws that I got. Okay, so I've got the wheels off. On the production, or the first production run of the Revel Kit, they put in these Allen screws. So we need to take those out. It's a 2mm Allen screw. You can't do it with a standard Imperial Allen screw. Looks like they stuck a little blue Loctite on these. Okay, so this is the hardware that I picked up. These are the Kegel adapters. I'm going to upgrade to the larger wheels at the same time. This is a Allen or a hex wrench. They're both 4mm, 8mm by 4mm. I got this one because it was stainless steel, but the head sticks up just a little bit too much. It sits flush if I don't put the lock washer in, but by the time I put the lock washer in, it's pushing up against the wheel, and I don't want that. So unfortunately, I don't get to use my stainless steel hardware. Joey, you watch that for me, don't eat it. Okay, and I picked up 2 types of washers. These are metric screws, but the parts, the best fit washers were standard. So this is a number 10 conventional lock washer, and this is a number 5, and it's called a steel exterior tooth lock washer. That's a mouthful. Okay, anyways, I'm going to use some of each. I'm not going to use the Loctite because I want to see which washer fits better. I'm tightening this slowly as the plastic kind of deforms a little bit around that lock washer. And I'm tightening it just to the point where the Allen wrench is starting to bend. So that's one side. I'll do the rest, and then we'll have a complete skateboard with torque boards, 100mm cloud wheels. Okay, so I've got the front done, and I alternated between those conventional lock washers and these star-shaped washers. Between the two, I don't think there's going to be any difference. It's going to be easier to find the regular number 10 lock washers, and I think they'll do the same job. On the back, I do have the pre-production motors, and they've actually got a different size of thread on it. So I'm just going to reuse the original threads, but I'm going to still use that number 10 lock washer. So one other thing to keep in mind is that the second production run of the Revel Kit is going to have bigger motors, so they might actually have different screws. So before you rush out and buy your screws, I'd wait and see what kind of screws they put on that, or what size the threads are. The information about the bigger motors comes from the forums that I participate in. I've seen some pictures, and it's just the end of November now, and the next production is going to be in late January, and those Revel kits are going to have larger, stronger motors on them. Before I put my last Kegel adapter on, I just wanted to show you guys something, which is how to lubricate your bearings. Once with the adapters off, you just get, this is speed cream. You don't want to use WD-40. You want to use a grease like speed cream. So you just put that there, give it a little turn, give it a little wiggle, let it soak in, and now your bearings are lubricated. And you do that on both sides. You also do it back here, just a little bit in there. And because skateboard bearings are subject to a lot of stress and a lot of dirt and a lot of grit. So if you ever hear a little bit of a squeak out of your motors, the first thing you do is you run for some grease and you re-grease those bearings. Okay, I'll finish putting it back together. Okay, so one other thing I'm going to show you, I ran out of bearings. I don't have enough loose bearings on hand to populate my torque board cloud wheels. So I just want to show you how to get them out of your old wheels. Just a nice little angled screwdriver like this. There it is. And they're out. If you didn't know that little trick, they can be kind of hard to get out. And there they are. That's the trick. Okay, so I got all four wheels on. I'm just doing a little bit more thorough job of lubricating these bearings. So I put on a little bead there, and then I just kind of work it in. And then I put another little bead on, a little drop, and then I try and get the liquid to flow in there. So this is name brand speed cream. You can get it at most board shops. Personally, I think that 3-in-1 oil or sewing machine oil would work as well, but I've been told, no, this is the best, so that's what I did. Okay, so it's been snowing out. I don't think they put too much, I don't think they put salt down on the roads yet, so if it's super warm out, I might actually take this for a test run and see what happens to see what kind of top speed it registers with the bigger wheels. In theory, faster speed with bigger wheels, but they are softer wheels, and that is going to give some increased rolling resistance. So we'll see what the net effect of all that is. And I guess I should take one last look at my little mud flap here with the bigger wheels on. The mud flap is still gives good clearance there. And I think that I'm still going to come along and make a much bigger mud flap. And then I'll do that for both sides. And then I'll store it for the winter.